This is video number 5. The area is a mare, a moscoviense crater. We're looking at again multiple towers in very hilly area, dense vegetation. This shows a typical crater formation. You've got bright perpendicular patterns around the edges. It looks like a very small wall. Then you've got a large structure inside, a large rod, a building with an excavation around the corners. The width of the rod, a building, would be about, I estimate, 200. Here it shows it's, yes, 200 meters, so it's a fairly large structure. And it's a very common feature where on the edge of a large crater you'll see a rod, a building, and then a little bright fence area around the other side. So this is very common, a large crater with towers around the edges. This was also seen in the Tycho crater. You can see that the towers around the edges, perpendicular. Also, when we see one area there, you'll see a tower formation and like a courtyard area which leads down into the crater. So you can see various types of squarish excavations, and they lead down into the courtyard, down into the crater. That shows again a typical rod-like building. You have 3 in the center of the crater, and again around the edges you've got very bright, fine lines happening. That's the excavation, and it's a very light green area. Also one more rod tower with shadow. This shows one tower with again the fine white lines around the edges of the shadow and very fine light green vegetation around there. It looks like very little courtyard excavation. The height here would be 100 meters. That's a 30 to 40 story structure. This is a rod structure as well inside a excavation. Again we notice the dense vegetation happening. The area has a lot of caverns. There's one in the crater as well, one rod tower sideways. We'll see an area here as well, a rod structure. This is a very interesting shape. It's crisscross pattern. Also there's a side rod there. Also these areas nearby show like a courtyard excavation, especially down there. And these are zigzag patterns. Again you'll see the rod-like structures around the edges of the crater. Some areas there show a lot of rods, and here we have a little portion of the crater with larger rods. a rod-like structure there. This is one other rod building with internal rods, very blurred. This is rod-like structure again. We'll see the rod towers in the structure. Again, an area of excavation, smaller towers inside the crater, shadow. It's seen there as well. One other example, excavation, internal towers and external rod building. Square excavations around there as well, internal towers and greenery, courtyards. Again, we see this square fine lines around the edges of the tower there as well. Excavation, this is a bit blurred. Quite a hilly area. Then all of a sudden we see all the towers draped around the edge of the crater, especially down this area, and a lot of hilly walls and areas down further. Dense greenery as well in the area. More towers. This is an interesting example. You've got the vertical towers coming up. A lot of hilly areas and crevices. Dense greenery. Again, we see the towers around the crater structure. We seem to have a large hilly area, and then they've got an entrance or a side area or a shadow. It's a common thing as well as here. Not sure if it's unnatural or artificial. We saw just by zooming, I saw this strange area down here. Yes, see that structure again, and there's some rod structures. This is one of the best examples of a rod building on the side of a crater. You've got the zigzag fine lines around the edges, and this is very clear. You see the various structures of the rod building. There's one underneath. We'll just do a very quick measurement of the width. We're looking at 160 meters. That's a fairly large structure. And again, this is one of the clearest examples. It's a prime example of rod building. You've got two intersecting rod structures there, then further up it's a built internal one, and then again that fine bright wall around the edge of the crater. That's a very good example. Again, that happens in this area as well. It's always around the edge of a crater. You'll see a very large rod building, and this area has also got many towers as well. Again, we see the numerous towers in the crevices. This area is very, very thick, and we've got many towers here on the edge of the crevice in the crater, which was common in the Tycho crater as well. So it seems to be a very common pattern here. Many towers here as well on the edge of craters. More towers. These are fairly large ones here. Shadow, interesting structure there. This is a very good example of very dense rod tower construction there, with many on the side and what looks like excavations, then a denser greener area. Many towers happening here, and crevices and craters. This area is fairly dense as well. Craters here, there's a pattern of craters around that one. And here we have quite a large group of towers, rod towers. There's two side by side, and many others. That there are three vertical ones in that crater. There's more rod constructions happening, very dense greenery as well, which we assume is vegetation. And many towers happening around the edge of the crater. Towers coming out of that crater. A very bright, luminous rod-like building in that crater, with two towers sticking out. Here we have smaller towers, and again zigzag walls. Here some more zigzag walls and courtyards, which are actually which have vegetation. This is an interesting pattern here, sideway rods. We have patterns happening down here which look like excavations. There's a large structure there, 3 or 4 internal ones, and a large rod, a building on the side. Again, a very large rod, a building on the side, many square type of buildings down the bottom and around this area as well. Very dense green. This is an area of lighter green vegetation, and we've got a zigzag pattern happening. There's some rods there and what look like excavations around the rods. Same here, but the area is very blurred. We're passing area of more denser vegetation. This interesting structure where it's actually, we've got towers and 2 internal ones, and here we've got a fairly common pattern of rectangular excavations happening, pathways or walkways. This area as well. You can see one tower there. You can see a solitary rod tower there. And again, that fine white line around excavation. There's excavation there.